Okay. Well, listen, thank you everybody for joining us live and later on watching this through the archive portal on the Fox Selling System. Today, we're going to be talking about facilitating a sales meeting. And this really is Tom, I know we say it all the time in terms of what is the most important, but when you think about the development of a bench, for instance, just as just one example, being able to stand in front of a room and conduct a sales meeting is critical to that. And I know probably most likely anybody who's on this right now knows about the pain it can cause standing up in front of a room, but maybe even worse than that is the pain inflicted upon the people sitting in the room if whoever's facilitating the meeting is not effective at it. And it's not an easy thing to do. And I think that as we go through, people will understand just some very fundamental basics are going to apply here. But I think that it's going to be helpful as people move forward in their careers, whether it's with the companies they're at now or, a company they may join later on down the road. So I'm Jim Kaleka, been working with Tom Fox for over 10 years now. And joining us today is Tom's son, Shawn Fox. I'll let him introduce himself briefly and very brief, Shawn. I mean, I think the fact that you have a Fox at the end of your name, I don't know how much you need to say. And then we'll bring in our host, Mr. Tom Fox. But Shawn, you want to go ahead and say hello?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Jim. I saw that we had almost, I think, 20 people registered, so maybe there's some people about to jump on. But yeah, Shawn Fox, I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm not sure if Jim mentioned it, but Tom always does. I'm his middle child. All three of us, Tom's kids, live in Chicago. Older brother's actually moving back to Detroit next month.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. So I am kind of an account manager, part of the business development and sales team for Fox Selling System, as well as Fox Sales Coaching and a lot of the custom kind of in-classroom training Tom does. So excited to be here this morning. Tom and I were actually, presenting in front of a big group last week. So, this topic will be fun to talk about today. It's always kind of a nice refresher to kind of get up in front of people and deal with that pressure, but also the fun feeling afterwards of like, man, I did that. That was great. So excited to be here this morning. And yeah, I'm excited to participate. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Shawn. It's interesting when you talk about standing up in front of talking in front of people. Tom, your quote, I'm not going to steal it. I love it. I love more of who the quote is from. But I was telling somebody yesterday, one of our clients, a new client, and this is not intended to, appeal for a raise or a bonus. But the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is, I cannot think of somebody who is in a better position to be able to speak to standing up in front of a room and conducting a meeting than Tom. Mm-hmm. I mean, in addition to conducting live training seminars across the country in front of thousands of people and in front of, wholesalers, it's been with beer, wine, liquor, non-alcoholic suppliers and distributors alike. And I think that wealth of experience and exposure to the industry is what makes us unique as it relates to training. So I think that while some of the content we talk about may seem basic, the fact of the matter is basics apply in every process, in every business, every sport. If you don't have the basics down, then you're going to struggle to be able to execute the more advanced techniques. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the 2021 Fox Open champion, Tom Fox.
Thanks, Jim. I can never hear that enough. So when you have a middle child who is an underperformer, I mean, he's given me strokes, and yet when it counted, the gross score, only one person can win, and his older brother, who's a really nice boy, they take a back seat, Jim, and just that's the way it works sometimes, It
was 110 degrees and pouring rain.
Yeah, but for you, and for me, it was 75 and sunny.
Pretty much,
playing the same day, the same courts. Yeah, we had.
It's easy to win when you play from the forward tees.
Yeah, right. That is funny. Anyway, Doug and Lauren, it's great to be here, and for all of our clients who are going to be watching this later on, we really think this is Jim mentioned it. It's a really important topic. Jim, last week we were in Vegas. I had you and Shawn prepare to do a little bit for this 90-minute seminar that I had to deliver in Vegas. We had 100 and some people, in our little room. And you had mentioned, Jim, for someone with the experience you had mentioned to me, and I guess I wasn't surprised, but it did catch me off guard a little bit. You said, I was a little nervous, and I just thought that was an important, here's someone who's, you have subject matter expertise and then some on the topic that you were going to speak about, as does Shawn. I thought that was an interesting point, that one of the things we want people to take away from today is we got to embrace the idea that we're always going to be nervous. And if you're not, then you're probably not human, because we're all, what are we nervous about? We're nervous about not delivering the best effort possible. We don't want to embarrass ourselves, obviously. And I think, beyond that, part of the idea of not embarrassing somebody, including any presenter, would be that there's value to the audience. And I think, we talk a lot about, we're not going to get into empathy at all today, but boy, empathy is an important component to say, what does the audience need to take away? And would it be valuable for them to take it away? Will they be interested in that? Thinking about that, plus being an expert on your topic, really, I think is the key. But I think more people are probably on the outside looking in. When you look at different presenters, more are probably underwhelming their audiences than not. And Doug and Lauren, I don't know if you have an opinion. You probably attend a lot of meetings, and have over the years seen a lot of other folks present, whether you've been at a distributor and you've seen all the suppliers, including yourselves, go ahead and present. But ultimately, I think there's some themes. But Doug and Lauren, I'd love to just quickly engage both of you. Would you say most meetings that you leave, do you say, man, what a great, they knocked it out of the park. Boy, am I impressed. What a great presentation. Or is it maybe opposite?
I would say completely opposite. I think I don't know, for presentations, I'm one who takes notes. That's just my learning style. Not all the stuff, but anything that is impactful, I'll take a note just so I can review it later. But I think what comes out of somebody's mouth is more important than how they, I don't want to say deliver it, but I get caught up on, people who have a lot of habits like ums and things like that. Then you start to lose your train of thought and you're not following the meeting. Then it becomes more of like a tally mark every time they say or repeat themselves or stammer about the same thing a different way. So yeah, I agree with all that.
Yep, I agree as well. I've certainly been underwhelmed quite a bit. Although I've had, an opportunity to have some pretty good presenters, or facilitators of meetings. Doug Nyer is one that really sticks out, and I know Jim is obviously aware of Doug Nyer. Just someone that brings a lot of energy to the room. Was always one to be able to hold my attention. And I'll admit, Jim did a pretty good job too.
Gold star.
I have no doubt. But I think one of the things that, again, I think the energy that you talk about, Doug, I think the quality content that Lauren speaks about, and I just think, the idea that we're going to engage the group, and how do you engage? And anytime you engage the group, let's be honest, you are taking a risk. You never really know how the group is going to handle engagement. Whether, like, I had a seminar I did for a client. I think it was actually when I was in Vegas for MAWA, little hour and a half little program. This client had a new employee that started that day. And of course, I always open it up and try to get a lot of feedback. And I don't think I've told you this, Jim or Shawn, but this new employee, and there were probably 150 people in this little hour and a half training program. This person, because I opened it up and I wanted to get feedback right away. This new employee, I don't know, maybe this person could explain it better than me. They felt obligated to dominate the meeting. And it was really difficult. And I had to, you had to kind of move move on several times and frankly cut her off several times, which was really uncomfortable, but I couldn't let her hijack the meeting. And I think she was very well intended, but maybe trying to make a first impression. And I think she failed at what impression she was trying to make. You could see people's, even on virtual with Zoom, you could see people's faces, So you want to get people engaged because they're not going to take away anything without engagement. So how do you do that? Well, we want to be inquisitive, getting people to open up, and even if you have to, calling on different people. So Doug and Lauren, in this case here, you are a little bit captive. So we won't abuse that, but I appreciate your help in advance. Getting people to practice, getting people to do things is important. So thinking, talking, doing, the more we can do that, there are risks, but in my opinion, it's risks you absolutely have to take because, if there's little engagement, then there's little takeaway. So love this quote here. I think this is, really critical, and I can only explain with my own journey as a presenter. I go back to grade school, high school, even college. I was always the last person to ever give a book report or get up in front of the room and give a speech. And it was mainly because of one thing, immaturity. And with that immaturity came lack of preparation and just not really knowing what I was going to talk about, kind of winging it, which I'm not very good at. That it drove just horrible performance. So, as simple as this is, and there's a lot of quotes on preparation. One of the ones I love, it says spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. But, Dale Carnegie, who Shawn, you actually went to a Dale Carnegie program where you had, I think for a semester, every week you had different meetings. So Dale Carnegie really was someone who really encouraged people to put themselves out there. And you had a great experience with that, right, Shawn? That was.
Yeah, it just completely gets you out of your comfort zone. I'm trying to remember, there were a number of speeches, but one of them was, I think they're all about 2 to 3 minutes. But one of them, you have to stand on a chair and give the entire talk or speech, if you will, at the top of your lungs, which is just like, it's unbelievably uncomfortable, but it just kind of gets you in the habit of like, hey, if I can do that, then I can pretty much do anything. Wow. I think I did something on like My Hero or something like that, but I'm screaming the whole time. And then other people are talking about like maybe addiction or just battles that they had. And it's just crazy if you're doing that, standing on a chair in front of, I think there were probably 30 or 40 people in the class. Thankfully, I had one of my really close friends that did it, but it was just a way, for us to work on our public speaking skills and, open up and be vulnerable. It was, yeah. It was I grew a lot there.
That's cool. Yeah. And I think that part of that would be, no one is ever going to get up on a chair and scream for an entire speech. But the fact that you had to get in that comfort zone or get out of your comfort zone and do something that was that outrageous, it does give you confidence that, hey, when appropriate, if I had to raise my voice because I was trying to make a key point, people are going to remember that. And that's kind of key. So again, glad everyone is able to watch today. And we're excited about, this particular development opportunity among all of the different programs that we have. Today's is on obviously developing the agenda and facilitating the sales meeting. Next month, we're going to get into, it's our last one for 2021 on using FSS and the scorecard function around executing against that. So, Shawn, I don't know that we need to necessarily launch this poll. I don't think that would be necessary, but there's a lot of things that scare people. And I don't know, Lauren or Doug, if you have an opinion, but mice and rats scare people. Some people there's fear of flying, that scares people. Heights scares people, snakes. And then in that same list is public speaking. So of all of those, actually snakes is the highest, but number 2 on that list is public speaking, which is fascinating. I hate snakes. I'm not even sure if I like heights. I don't mind flying, but certainly don't like mice or rats either. So I guess that's interesting. But boy, a lot of people are just freaked out by public speaking. And I think it does come back to, are they an expert on the topic they're going to, what did Dale Carnegie say, Shawn? It was like, you have to be credible. You have to have,
he says you have to have earned the right to speak.
Earn the right. Yeah. Earn the right.
Right. And
yeah,
they weren't, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I took the course as well. They didn't do that, make us stand on a stool. I mean, although I had to stand on a stool just because nobody could see me.
That's funny.
But I did that anyways, because I'm used to it, I'm used to it. But I think, Tom, the one thing when you talk about the things that people are afraid of, the reaction to that fear is the same in public speaking as it is typically in any other thing, where it can be paralyzing if it is at the extreme. And I know, Doug, going through role playing, a lot of companies will do role playing. We're a big advocate of that. Or getting up in front of a sales meeting, just presenting, kind of spontaneous, even with preparation, can be very, very intimidating to an individual. That fear it's real, it's powerful, and it can, the people literally will get sick from it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting that you guys both took that. That's pretty cool. But, obviously we talk a lot about why our meeting's ineffective. I do think the idea that if the topic isn't one of interest, that could be an issue. If the speaker brings no energy, if they're reading the slides and not really speaking to the audience, visuals can have a lot to do with that. And I think the other thing is too, just not any engagement and really not any focus against really what's in it for the audience. And I think that is always job one. We're going to have a little template, a little meeting planner, which can be a great resource. And the first thing we think of is, okay, what is the objective of the meeting? Like, what do you need to have people take away? And then number two, what's in it for the audience? And that's like number two. And I can't imagine how many speakers don't even focus on that at all. So typically a huge opportunity. When we think about why we conduct a meeting, a lot of these things are, there are things that are in it for the audience. We've got to communicate. We got to transfer information from our head into the heads of the audience around if it's a new program, any new items, anything we're trying to do from a goal or execution standpoint. Maybe we're even doing some training. But the whole idea of why we're having a meeting, it's one of the things we're going to talk about a lot is this idea of, maybe the meeting doesn't even have to take place. Maybe we could send an email, and if there's 9 agenda items, for a meeting, maybe cut half of them off and send some kind of written communication on it. Spend the most time on what's really, really important. So that allows us to have more engagement just versus this obligation. Getting through all the points is just not the key. So when you think about a great meeting and you think about like a great one-word definition of leadership, the idea of influence. Why are we conducting a meeting? We want to influence the audience. I mean, and again, influencing them on whatever we're needing them to take away. Whether it's, hey, I want to influence them so they're more capable of selling in our program than they would have been without the meeting. So I'm going to walk them through what they should say, some of the key components. I'm going to get them to practice, get them to engage. That will allow me to influence the audience, because ultimately the influence has to come in 2 forms. We want to be able to influence what they can do. Like almost any meeting, really, you think about it, it's like, what do I need you to know? And what do I need you to be able to do? And that really comes down to this attitudes and behaviors, and even an interest that they would want to know or even be good at something or better at something. And I just, again, I don't know how much focus, Jim or Shawn, people put into this idea of influencing the audience versus kind of just checking the box saying, hey, I had my our sales meeting on our new innovation, and I checked the box, versus no. There were 3 things they had to leave with. So we'll get into that there. All right. So true or false? I wish my meetings brought out more engagement. Doug and Lauren, I mean, you all conduct meetings, I'm sure, often. Would you say that you wish your meetings were more engaging, or do you think, hey, they're pretty darn engaging? I make sure of that. What do you both say about that?
I agree with that. I think it's very hard, especially right now, because 95% of my meetings are through Zoom or in
Yeah.
a parking lot outside screaming while people are in a car. Very hard to get engagement. But yeah, even if it wasn't COVID, yeah, and a lot of my hosts, not a lot, one in particular, wholesaler is very negative. The sales or staff are very negative and they have a poker face. There's zero emotion or zero anything. I don't care what you're doing up there. There's just, they're checked out all the time.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Doug, what do you think? Would you want your meetings to be more engaging?
Sure. You know, the most disappointing thing is when you think, all right, I've got all the right questions, I've got everything, and just depending on the day, man, there's nothing. Those are the ones that hurt the most.
Yeah, it is very frustrating. I've told this story a lot, but I've been doing this 22 years, and the last year and a half, year and 3/4 now has been really almost all virtual. But before that, it was obviously mostly all in person. And even whether it's virtual or in person, I bet 50% of the time before I actually start a training meeting, the Rob Stauffer or the VP of sales, whoever my key contact is, will come up to me in private prior to it starting saying, listen, don't worry, this won't be a reflection on you, but our team is that they're not really engaging. They're not going to really jump in much. So it's not a reflection on you. And I just, okay. Yeah, okay. So in 20 years, how many times do you think I've ever had a meeting where the audience really just never engaged? Zero. And the reason why now, again, I'm not saying it happened immediately. I mean, you have to build rapport, but we're going to talk about the word culture, and culture equals the behavior you tolerate. And I guess when we have a meeting, I'm just not going to accept anything other than high levels of engagement. And again, it may not happen out of the gate, but the idea that we're deliberate, and even trying to get one person maybe to start priming the pump. And if you can get one person going, and then it can start to spread like wildfire. But usually at the very first break, an hour and a half, 2 hours in, that same person almost every time will say, geez, they're really opening up. I'm really glad. And, it's like, I'm kind of surprised. And I'm like, I'm not, most people, if you give them a chance, and again, if it's a topic that they're comfortable with, and even if it's a safe environment, everyone has their own culture. And, there are some people who facilitate meetings. If you ask a question or if you make a comment and you're not giving them the answers they want, it can be, it can be a bad experience. And that's going to drive a lot of disengagement, because people are like, why would I want to embarrass myself? This is stupid. So anyway, I think it's one of those things, Jim, where you just got to say, I don't care how long I have to be silent. I'll pause for 10, 15 seconds. It might be uncomfortable. Someone always steps up, and then it just takes off. And usually my biggest concern isn't getting people engaged. It's what we call, you got to land the plane. You got to land the plane on time. And if like, and today I got an hour and 15 hour and 20 minutes to land the plane today. Everyone, you may have a distributor meeting where you have 15 minutes. You got to land the plane. So it's always one of those, okay, be careful what you wish for. If you have a lot of engagement, sometimes you may not be able to land the plane. So you got to be very mindful of that.
Yeah, you might have somebody like the first day on the job person
Yeah.
that wanted to dominate it. I think there are a couple of things that are at play here that are similar to the fear of speaking, but it might, I think a lot of what drives that either is there's not a comfort level, which could be as related to the culture. The people don't want to speak up and make a fool of themselves or have the wrong answer, even though they know it. They're just, reluctant to do so. And I think that probably is more the biggest factor in it. Or they're in a hurry. They figure if they ask questions, it's just going to prolong the meeting.
Yeah. I remember I did a meeting in Tampa. It was for Labatt USA back, God, this is 10 or 12 years ago. They told me I had 3 hours at this meeting to present research on the national accounts scene within all beverage alcohol. And Chris Williams at the time was running national accounts for Labatt USA. So the day starts, and about an hour in, he comes over and says, I don't know if I can give you 3 hours. It might be 2 hours. I said, hey, whatever you have. And then at lunchtime, he goes, Fox, it's looking like 90 minutes. Well, by the time I got on at 4 o'clock, he goes, you got a half hour. So, and so it was one of those things where, again, you got to go back to, okay, these are the 3 things I have to leave you with. And thank God I was actually, when I first became a consultant, I went to a public speaking class with a guy named Dr. Pfau, who was unbelievable. And one of the things he said was, this is going to happen to you. When you are a consultant and you're in the public speaking business, you're going to have someone promise you X and you're going to get X minus, and never, ever, ever say, like, and I would encourage all of you, if you ever had a distributor meeting and they cut you back, you thought you had X amount of time and they cut you in half, never say, well, listen, I don't know how I'm going to, never apologize, never like criticize or ask for like any, like, hey, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Just act like this is what you expected to have happen. So, hey, listen, half hour, I'm looking forward to walking you through the 3 things that you really got to take away from today. And it worked out great. And it was annoying, obviously, on one level, but on the other level, it's like, what control do I have? I'm going to take what they give me. And all of you at the same thing, you can't appeal it. I couldn't say, well, Chris, I object. And I think we should all work until 8 o'clock and give me the 3 hour, never going to happen. The
good news is that the price per word that you had to deliver went up dramatically, and a lot more, same pay for less work.
I actually think this was a freebie, because he had bought the research and I told him I'd come down and speak to it. So it was fine.
Even better.
Anyway, so when you think about a lot of speakers who really feel like they have to do all the work versus those who really want to be recognized as really the best at their topic, and you want everybody else to be really good at the topic, you got to get them to do all the work. So quick story. I've been a consultant 22 years. I had left Miller Brewing Company, and one of my early clients as a consultant was with Miller, and Miller wanted me to do like a 45-minute category management little module at their national sales meeting. They had all their distributors there, and they had like 9 or 10 different tracks. And so these distributors could go for like 3 hours. They could go to any of these different tracks and operations stuff. And we were category management. There were sales and different ones. And before you had a chance to present, that day during the national sales meeting, we had to come in a day early, and they had a professional public speaker who wanted to see everyone do a dress rehearsal. So I do my dress, and this was like such a blessing. I give my 45-minute talk on category management, and the public speaking guru says, how do you think it went? And I said, it went great. I mean, I know what the hell I'm talking about. It went great. And then he didn't say anything. And about 4 seconds later, I said, what do you think? And he goes, well, what I think is, I think you know a lot about category management. And I was like, that sounds like a bad thing. He said, no, but if that's what you want people to take away, if you want people to take away that, hey, this Fox guy knows a lot about category, then your presentation's great. If you want them to be really good at category management, you got to engage them. You got to have them do some work. And he goes, and it won't take long. And so he's probably an hour later, we did 2 or 3 little things to get the group involved. And I mean, and at the end of it, he's like, listen, young man. And at the time I was young. I mean, I was probably 37 at the time, but he's like, if you want to make money and have a daily rate that can provide for your family, he goes, you got to get your audience to do all the work. You'll never, ever command a high rate if all you're doing is lecturing. And boy, what a lucky break that was. And so I would want that to translate to everybody else. Again, the objective never should be, I want to be viewed as an expert. I want on the topic I'm speaking about, I want everybody else to be an expert. That's never going to happen without them doing all the work. I hope that makes sense. And maybe it's obvious, but again, how many meetings people aren't thinking about that because the facilitator is the one doing all the work. Not the way to go. So again, the idea is transferring information, so all these different things that we'd want them to know that they got to know. Again, we could have a long list of bullet points here, But as you think about all the things that you want them to know, and then you think about engaging them, it does go back to this idea of involvement. So you can see that fourth bullet point is a lot different than that top bullet point, where when you lecture, people forget, but the more you can involve them, where we hear, the audience hears you speak, they maybe see you demonstrate something, then we discuss it, and then we get them to do it, and we discuss it, then people start acquiring skill, and then they really, their development can really explode. So again, Jim, I can't imagine how many meetings never get past that first bullet point. It's just, whether it's just lack of vulnerability, they don't want to take any risks.
Well, you talk in some of your seminars, I mean, several of them, the whole idea around being interesting versus being interested. And I think a lot of it comes down to that. I mean, given the opportunity, people like to talk, and they do if they're comfortable. If they're not, then not so much. What I think is the most interesting bullet point on this slide is the bottom one.
Yeah.
What I teach to another, I master. And that was one of Covey's principles.
Yeah.
That, he talks about his children coming back from school and asking them, what did they learn today? And he would have them teach him. And that was just this wonderful opportunity for them to really demonstrate that they had comprehended and understood it. So I think that
that's a great point.
It's a good thing.
Cool. So the different steps, obviously, first step is prepare. We'll get into that. Then obviously managing the meeting. There's a few best practices there. And then we'll even get into delivery. Again, just these are the kind of the main components. So from a prep standpoint, I really do want people to be thinking less is more, because they're not going to take away 9 things. So if you have 9 things that you're trying to go over, then if you don't prioritize that, there's a good chance what you really needed them to take away, they're not going to take away. So it probably does make sense to really challenge yourself and say, what do they have to know? And what do I have to be able to do? Less is absolutely more, for sure. So really, when you think about typical objectives, again, the ones in black would be the ones that are probably, again, typical, but the ones in red, I think, give us an opportunity to really, I think, have much more value when we start thinking about really influencing people. Having a quick check-in around the company vision, mission, and values is always a good idea, just from the mindset standpoint. People bringing success stories that can really be contagious. I think that's great. Having some component of the meeting around learning and development, I think, makes a lot of sense. And really every month, if we were in front of our distributors, even once a quarter, there's always going to be a training opportunity to say, hey, we're selling this Seagram's Escapes innovation. Here's the sell sheet on it. Let's go ahead and demonstrate what this might sound like with a typical customer, and then I want you to practice. Everyone's got a sell sheet. Could be a really easy example. Hey, everyone gets a chance, just to practice selling this in. You're all, you're motivated. You're going to have an incentive, but we want, when you're actually selling it to your customers, we want you to be articulating the highest quality content. Let's practice, because it's going to be awkward when they practice, but if we can get them to practice, then that drives their development, and it also influences their behavior. So I just think, again, a lot of these things like general housekeeping stuff, gosh, I'd like to think that could go in an email memo, not necessarily, a thing. So here is our meeting worksheet. You can see at the top, I mentioned, what is our objective or objectives that we're trying to get accomplished? Why would those objectives be important to the audience? What are the 2 or 3 things they have to leave with that we have to transfer? The opening idea and closing idea, some people might think that's kind of corny, but the more you can prep around getting the audience right out of the gate, I think so many sales meetings start with, all right, let's get started. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We can do better than that. We can do a lot better than that. I'll give you some examples of those kinds of things. And then the really another big one is, how are we going to know if the audience understands? How are we going to know if they actually take away what we want them to take away? And then what visuals? Here's an example of what this could look like. Again, this might be just, again, for a sales meeting kicking off. with fictitious Fox Seltzer. What's in it for the audience? Well, we're going to hopefully make them more money, help them, increase their share, and then maybe there's a chance they could win the incentive trip. So we'll focus a lot on what's in it for them. The 2 or 3 pieces of information, we're going to have a sell sheet. So getting people to practice those 3 main features and benefits that we know if they had a chance to mention those 3, they're putting themselves in the best position, for success. We're going to identify the key target accounts that we want to get the placement in. Again, that could be one of the 3 things, and then timing. And if that was the 3 things, then it's like, boy, we can spend more time practicing and less time going over details that really we don't need to, a whole lot. And then in an opening idea, this could be a situation where you may make a copy of a $100 bill, put it on everyone's seat. Again, it might be, you're limited to your creativity here. There's all kinds of things. How are you going to involve the audience? Take the sell sheet, have a brand manager maybe go over what a role play or a rehearsal might sound like when they sell it in, and then get everyone else to practice. That might take a few minutes, but it would be well worth it getting people to practice that. And then just checking in. How are you going to know if they get it? Check in. What do you think? Can you see yourself saying those things? I mean, just all those kinds of ways of engaging the group. Closing idea. Maybe there's a way to get the owner to do a quick little video, maybe knocking, again, this is just a silly idea, but any of those could be things that people could remember. Could be there. So Lauren and Doug, any thoughts on the little meeting template? Again, I imagine you probably go through something in your, either you have something formal you look at, or you probably do a lot of this, intuitively, but what do you think about the template?
I'm a big fan of less is more.
Yeah.
So this is good. This would certainly, in my pre-work help me out. And maybe this isn't the right time to talk about it, Tom.
No, go ahead.
We're given like a template almost. We have monthly meetings, basically with the principles of the wholesaler, and we're given a template to kind of fill out. I would love at some point for you to maybe look at that template.
Yeah,
and say,
I'd be happy to.
Just because I'll tell you, I get bogged down. I mean, we can have 30 slides, and to your point, I want to cover, I really wanted to remember 3. Well, the company says I got to go through these 30 slides, but do I really? Can I put them in the appendix? Can I, how do I deliver my message, but at the same time, kind of utilize the slides that I'm given to, to conduct the meeting?
I'd love to see that. I'd be happy to give you some thoughts on that. I think it's good to have some direction. I think if companies don't give some direction as to what people should be doing when they're presenting in front of their distributors, we could see such inconsistency and really miss the mark. But anyway, Lauren, any thoughts from you on the template?
I think the template's a good reminder to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And also objectives, SMART goals, and things like that. So getting straight to the point and not putting too much fluff in it, giving them only the details that they need. And that's it. Straightforward, simple, rememberable.
Yeah, good stuff.
The challenge that, and I feel for the suppliers, because today, I mean, if we were talking about this 20 years ago, the number of suppliers that a distributor would have might be on one hand. And if you were dealing with an AB, it wasn't, one finger, if they were exclusive. So the amount of time you could have and the things that the opportunity you had to communicate it was much greater. Now suppliers are competing against all of the other suppliers in-house times all of the different brands, not to mention the distributor having so many things, because it's particularly with COVID now, the opportunity to bring your group together and to be able to communicate everything that they need to know is more challenging. So your points about really refining that and looking at alternative means of getting that information to them, whether it's in smaller groups or whatever it might be, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah, agree. Absolutely agree. So what does the audience expect? I do think they expect expertise. I think they expect, to have energy, that they're not bored, even educated, I'm not going to read every one of these, but a lot of these really, and I think it does come down to have some benefit. I think that's not unreasonable expectations, but I do think that most, and again, I asked both Lauren and Doug at the beginning, are your expectations exceeded or are you underwhelmed? And both had said, more times than not. And when I attend a meeting, we're not, these expectations that we have, and they're not outrageous expectations, but they're not being met. And that's, and I think it comes down to, again, what's in it for the audience. And so again, you look at that very top one, hey, what's the objective of the meeting? Number two, what's the audience benefit? I honestly don't know how many people actually consciously think of what is in it for the audience. I just don't think they do. And if they did, again, more money, we might not be able to influence if it's a distributor for time off. I know a lot of people love time off. They'd probably go through hell and back to get some time off, but maybe a trip. And I think some of these things are changing now, especially with COVID. I imagine some of the brewery trips that people used to do, they probably can't do. So we got to even get more creative than ever now around, how do we really capture their heart and their mind? And again, maybe it's just about the money with some people. But even with the distributor principles, what's in it for them? We're going to obviously want, we're going to want them to even give us the right to get up in front of their team and even have the incentive or even the emphasis, the MBO, the PFP, whatever. I think that's, you get that opportunity. It might require us actually selling the distributor principle on it first. So we have to recognize what's in it for them. Well, more market share, more profitability, all those kinds of things. So one of the other things we thought too, in terms of making their job easier, and I would love to get Doug and Lauren, your opinion on this, but I think you've all seen our way of prepping around building selling stories and having even some kind of content to say, all right, here are some of the key features on the left side. Here are some of the key benefits. So it might look something like this. So when you're selling this in, here's some of the things. Suppliers are the brand owners. Distributors, they're the middle tier who actually sells it to the account. So I don't know that we can expect salespeople at our distributors to be all that, worthy or interested in actually building selling stores. I think we have to support them with this to make their job easier and to make their job more effective. And Jim, I mean, how many suppliers when you were at the distributor that you thought were actually any good at this? Like they actually did that?
Well, none of them. Honestly, none. They would supply point of sale material, the UPC code, pictures of point of sale, that type of thing. They might supply features, the product profiles, whatnot. There came a point in time when we were engaged with you,
yeah,
where we were, and I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but we were doing these things based on our involvement with you, and we looked for it from our suppliers, and the ones that were more engaging. I mean, we even had pushback, honestly, from some craft because they were still into the hops, and that's not important, but they were really about the romance of the product and the liquid rather than what that meant to the retailer or to the consumer.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I just think part of what's in it for the audience is making their job easier. And if we can give them some talking points, they're going to be more effective, and it's one less thing that they have to be thinking about. So something to think, and in getting them to practice is important, because when you think about just how quickly people forget, I mean, this is pretty daunting that 90% of what even we're talking about right now could be forgotten if there's not some reinforcement within 30 days. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So how do we drive better retention? Well, again, it goes into engagement and involvement. So involve me and I will do it versus tell me, I might remember, I might listen, but I probably won't remember, and then tell only, show and tell puts us in the best position. So a lot of those visuals become critically important, and even leave behinds become critically important. And then the idea, one of the key pillars of our prep is, how are we going to know if they took away our message? Well, you could test, you could do some role playing or even rehearsing. But some, maybe flip charting some things. Any of these are just ideas that stack the deck for retention. Because I mean, I just remember I spent 6 years at a distributor in Virginia, and I remember so many times suppliers would come in, we'd kick something off, and then a month later, why aren't we hitting the goal? Why are we coming up short? And I remember, I go, well, geez, if you remember that meeting, I think we missed the mark on the meeting. I think, you may have thought you checked the box and, hey, they're going to go out there and maybe they were motivated for the first week, but if we didn't make their job easier because we actually identified the accounts they should call on and we didn't identify some of the key feature and benefit bullet points, we were not setting ourselves up for success at all. I think it's a good idea too, if you have an agenda, to get it at least to the distributor principals, the leadership, just so if there's anything on there that they might be concerned. There's nothing worse. And maybe it's happened to everybody. It's certainly happened to me, where you bring up a topic that they were not aware I was going to bring up, and they jump up and they go, we're not talking about that now. And it really derails the whole meeting because you were thinking this was an appropriate topic. You didn't share it with the distributor. Next thing you know, then you've any confidence anyone would have, you're gonna lose it.
Tom, what have you found to be the most ideal? Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? How early should that be delivered?
I think the earlier the better, just because I think if we get it to them an hour beforehand, the chances of it still being in their inbox is highly possible. I think a 24 hours minimum in there. And even if you could get it to them earlier than that, it would even be better. So not even an agenda, but maybe even a copy of your presentation deck. And I think in some cases, Jim, you could know this more than I would, but in some cases, distributors probably demand it. We have to see it. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of work with Heidelberg. In Heidelberg, there were a couple of their operations. If you were presenting, they wanted to see everything. And now you get it, right?
Yeah, and I think, again, more now than ever before with the number of suppliers that are trying to get, FaceTime with the distributor. It's very, very, very competitive.
Yeah. No, you're right. So again, these are maybe some casual or corny things that might seem corny, but any of these ways to kind of open up your meeting are just going to get people. They're going to listen out of the gate, and that's what we want. Because it's interesting, it's different. We took a risk. I'm not going to read all of these, but some of these can be really effective. Especially if you practice it a few times and if you think it through. And Jim, I think I've done every one of these, including I'll shave my head. One, I was at a distributor in Roanoke, Virginia, and we had a goal, and we were actually going against one of their other distributors, and I just said, hey, if that distributor, if you don't beat that distributor, I can't remember exactly how it went, but I was like, we're going to win, and if we don't, I'm shaving my head. No one wants to see that. So, and I didn't have to, thank God.
I would love to see it.
Yeah, right. Other ones here, again, quotes, humor, whatever, any of these, but I think I always appreciate, Jim, if someone has a pretty defined opening that they really wanted to kind of kick it off with a bang and just grab people out of the gate. I really appreciate that. I really do.
I do too. And I think you can just look at entertainment as an example. Whether you go to a concert, typically the opening, whatever the band comes out with, it will grab the audience, or sometimes the opening of a new TV show or movie, there's something that grabs you. So I think that it's just as important in this situation. Now you have their attention.
Of course, the drummer would want there to be a lot of high energy out of the gate. We got to get the audience going with the way the percussion can drive that. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that.
And more cowbell.
And more. Boy, I saw that the other day. How funny is it? I got a fever.
It's so fun.
I got a fever. What does he say? I got a fever.
I got a fever, and the only
nothing
is more cowbell.
Hey, baby, I need more fever, baby.
Yeah, he's so good.
Oh my God. All right. So managing the meeting, Obviously, we're going to talk about the audience, but there's things to be focused on as far as the room. Is it going to work in terms of what you're trying to get accomplished? The agenda we've kind of already talked about. Got to land the plane on time. And if you're managing a big meeting where you have multiple speakers, managing the speakers, and then even the follow-up. So, all right, I would love to get Lauren and Doug, your opinion on this. What do you do if you are facilitating a meeting and I don't think people are doing it to be malintended or to really disrupt the meeting, but you could hear two people talking in the audience while you're presenting. Again, they're not talking loud, but it's loud enough for you to hear it, and it's loud enough for other people to hear it. Lauren and Doug, how would you handle that?
I've actually had that happen before in my past.
I bet.
And it was principals who were doing it.
Oh gosh.
So I basically just said, hey, so-and-so, I know you guys are super stoked about the programs I'm getting ready to mention, but let's hold it down so that we can let the other people in the room not hear it from you before they hear it from me.
Ooh, I like that. Then you're giving them some credit that they're actually talking about what we want to talk, even if they weren't. You're not. That's awesome.
I'm sure that they weren't. They were probably talking about bigger issues or opportunities, right. But at the same time, they were disruptive. So,
Doug, what would you do?
Yeah, typically just ask, hey, is there a question you have a concern about, what I'm talking about, so on and so forth. I find it with, in this whole Zoom age, I don't know if it's disruptive then to the group, but it certainly is to me, as I constantly try to watch, for nonverbals and things like that. And man, if they're not looking into the camera, if they're not engaged, it throws me off my game, man. It really screws me up. So, yeah, anything you can talk about here, it certainly would help.
Well, yeah, no, and I think a couple things based on your comment. As far as virtual goes, I think that the energy that you bring has to be over the top, like way more than you would bring in an in-person meeting. So just getting yourself fired up beforehand, just to go, because energy can be somewhat contagious. There's a lot you can't control. I think one of the things too about virtual meetings, we would definitely want to speak to. I appreciate Lauren and Doug, both of you keeping your camera on. I know the culture of some companies, it doesn't require all the participants to have their camera on. We always ask, hey, we'd really prefer if you had it on. Again, no one works for us, so people can say, screw you, I'm not doing it. But it's not gonna be without us trying. And even when some people don't have it on and you ask, I would say 80% of the time people will turn it on just because we've asked. The 20% that they don't, because then who knows? They might be playing solitaire, they might not even be in the room. Who knows if you have a big enough meeting? But, it's in some cases, we've had some people come back and say, I haven't taken a shower. I've got a baseball cap on. I'm just not going to turn my camera, or my room behind me. My office is a mess. I'd prefer to not to have it on. We just know, and it's probably obvious, the meeting's going to be way better if people keep their camera on. And I think the other thing too, the more you can engage people don't want to be caught off guard or embarrassed because we ask a question and they didn't hear it because they weren't listening. So if that happens once, that's usually enough for the rest of that meeting. People probably drop what they're doing and go, I better be all in. But back to this question, I wanted to give you my take on it. If I was in a meeting, and this has happened to me, Lauren, as well. It happens a lot. If I'm conducting a meeting and there are two people talking, I will absolutely not initially not want to embarrass them. I'm assuming that they're not malintended. I'm assuming that this distraction isn't anything that they were really wanting to do. They just got caught up for a second. We're talking and maybe just not aware of what that is doing for the rest of the room. So what I'll do is I'll kind of turn my head away from the people talking. So like if they're in the middle of the room, I'll look at the front of the room, but I'll start walking towards them, looking at the front of the room, addressing the front of the room. But it's obvious, but as the closer I get to the two people talking, and I'm not looking at them, but guess what they're going to stop doing? I mean, they're going to stop talking and I won't have embarrassed them. Again, some people call people out. Hey, this is my meeting, shut the heck up. That's not my style. I would want them to stop on their own. And if someone really becomes a major distraction, then you got to address it. Hey, we're going to table that. We're going to have a break, or when we wrap up, why don't you and I grab some side time and we can sort that out. That happens a lot. But if someone's if it's like the first infraction, I'm probably not going to embarrass them. I'm probably going to walk close to them, but not look at them. And I mean, I'm going to say 99% of the time that solves the problem. And if it doesn't, then you can look at them. And then I might just say, what do you think? Based on whatever I'm talking about, that, and even again, still pretty much a safe environment, not wanting someone to, be embarrassed or, again, it's not like you want the punishment to fit the crime. And at this point, I don't think the crime was all that serious. So makes sense. Again, this here, you're welcome to take a screenshot of this, but there's a lot of great ideas on here as far as what you could do if you had audience issues. And again, my culture is a safe environment. So a lot of these things really do work and have worked very, very well over time. So again, I'm not going to go over each of these. There's no need to do that, but some good ideas here as to how you handle the disruptor, the long-winded, the late person who's late, any of that. So good resource here. In terms of managing the room, I do think Murphy's Law of assuming that, hey, if we lost a light bulb, remember the old projectors, hey, I'm just going to have a spare. I just have to assume it's probably going to burn out today. And having that spare is probably a good idea. Having some handouts if necessary. So managing the rooms, I think, becomes really important. The microphone, computer, having it. I always back up whatever deck I'm going to present. In case my computer crashes, I've got a little memory stick that handles that. The other thing too, around managing the meeting, I think you got to land the plane on time. I mean, every training class or even every meeting we conduct, there is a defined expectation of how long this is going to last. And again, think about a way to lose an audience. If we're supposed to end at 11:30 and I end at 11:40, we're going to upset a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people who are not going to be happy about that. So landing, it's a term we use a lot in our firm. Shawn and Jim, we talk about it a lot, but we got to land the plane. You got to land the plane. It's not just courtesy. It's damaging if you don't. A, you won't get invited back, and B, whatever goodwill you generated, you could have lost a lot of it. And it's still easy to do by still focusing on ultimately what's in it for the audience. And then, and again, this comes back to culture. I have never once said in a situation, hey, put your phones away, put your iPads away, put your computers away. But every time I always go to the person who runs the company or the distributorship, and every time I always say, if this is important to you, would you mind mentioning it before you introduce me? That way it came down from someone who's, of authority, not that I'm not, have some authority because I'm speaking. I just prefer if that's because some companies don't care. And, and how many times have you seen it where the owner or the sales VP says, hey, everyone off your phones, put them away. And when the meeting starts, who's on their phone? That sales VP, which is really annoying. But again, it's their meeting, right? So I think some of those things they really can be downers for a meeting, but I think that should be established up front. Anyway, last thing we're going to talk about is the delivery in terms of the most important elements of bringing energy and presenting and public speaking, the whole schmeal. So here is another poll. So Lauren and Doug, I would love to get your opinion. There are three elements of impact when people speak publicly. Number one, there is verbal impact. Verbal impact that impact is based on the words that you say. So the words you say have impact. Question is how much impact. Number two is vocal impact, how you say the words. has impact. So there's verbal, vocal. Third is, you probably could figure it out, visual. How you look when you say the words. And so my question to both of you would be, what is the highest percentage of impact? Because if you add up verbal, vocal, visual, it adds up to 100% of the impact, but they're not 33, 33, 33. So Doug, what do you think, Doug?
I think it's it's verbal.
Verbal.
In my opinion, if you have enough conviction in your voice, you can make anybody believe anything.
So the words you say, the verbal impact is the greatest.
Yeah.
Okay.
How you present. Yeah.
Lauren, what do you think? Verbal, vocal, visual?
God, they're all so important.
They are.
They are all so important, but I think people are tending to visually watch you, and it helps them. I guess I would say the words that come out of your mouth, the verbal.
Verbal. So okay. So, okay. But you mentioned kind of visual in there too. And then Doug, you kind of said, hey, conviction.
Yeah.
Do you get conviction from the words you say, or is that more from vocal?
No. I certainly think it's number two. It's vocal.
Vocal.
My point is no matter what you say, if you vocalize it, and you present it in a way, people will believe it. If you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you mumble your words and nobody's engaged, well, it doesn't make a difference.
Okay. Yeah. So, Lauren, and you had mentioned at the beginning, you said, hey, I write down notes. I'm listening to what they say. I want to have quality content delivered. That's what I expect. That's what I want. And you can't argue with it. So, unfortunately, you're both wrong. But here's the deal. They're all important, and I'll give you my take on this, but the research is fascinating. So are you ready? The components of impact, number one, verbal, 7% of the impact. Vocal, 38% of the impact, leaving 55% for visual. So you kind of said that too, Lauren, that visual, but you add it up, it's 100%. Now, let's talk about this. Now, obviously, if someone presents the following. So our Seagram's Escapes, the new innovation, is going to be growing at 55% over last year. The profit levels are very compelling. You're going to make 70% more profit than you'd make off of mainstream beers. So we think that this is a wonderful opportunity for you to make more money. Now, that I couldn't have done it more monotone, but the words that were mentioned were important words, right? But no conviction, to your point, Doug, and then no visual. If I'm going to go, that's 40%. Are you kidding me? 40%. That's a lot more profit for the retailer. They're looking for ways to make more money. You could have a blast with it. Now, let's talk about these percentages. So, I will tell you, when I saw this research, I struggled for one reason, because I was like, I speak for a living. Is this really like indicating that whatever I say, it doesn't matter? No, that's not what it says. So I think the 7% deserves a little asterisk, because what would compel anyone, any of us, what would compel any of you, as you're mentioning the words that are part of your presentation, what would compel any of you, any of us, to have aggressiveness vocally, where you would get on that chair and you'd yell like what you talked about, Shawn, or you just had amazing hand and body gestures that just suggested how important this was? What would compel anyone to get out, because every one of us lives in our comfort zone. So to get out of our comfort zone, I think requires one important aspect, and it deals straight to the verbal. What do you think? Let me ask both of you the question. What would compel either of you to be very aggressive vocally or very aggressive visually? What would compel you? What would have to be there for you to be aggressive visually and vocally?
Good content.
Exactly. I mean, if you are not sold on the 7%, there's no way you're going to be aggressive. But if you believe the 7%, you really believe it. And then I said to you, and if Jim or Shawn were going to present, I remember when Shawn gave the best man toast to his older brother's wedding. I remember saying to him minutes before, I don't know if you remember this, Shawn, but I just said, when you are out there delivering, and Jim, you were there, you were, when you are delivering your toast, I want you to have more fun than you've ever had in your life. Because as people watch you deliver this toast, they're not going to have more fun than you, but they might have as much fun as you. If you're having fun, we're going to have fun too. And I mean, you knocked it out of the park.
I had so much fun, I forgot an entire paragraph.
But again, who cares, right?
Well, no one
cared.
Only I knew that I messed it up.
Yeah, no one cared.
Or I forgot about it, I should say.
But Lauren, I agree with you. Doug, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I agree. I think if you are sold on the 7%, I could say to every one of you, I want you to go overboard, aggressive, vocally and visually. Take a risk, get out of your comfort zone. Because when you get out of your comfort zone, now you have redefined your comfort zone. What do you think about it? Do you think that makes sense, Doug?
Oh yeah, as the great Brett Michaels once said, something to believe in, right? And then when you believe in something, yeah, of course, you can sing it from the mountaintops, right?
So who is the great Brett Michaels? Did you say?
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah. What was it he said? I was too busy laughing at the reference. What was it he said?
Well, I mean, I'm sure many, many wonderful things, but give me something to believe in was
okay.
one of his lyrics.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Who was the guy that used to be the Red Hook guy? What was his name? You know him. He had the thing about the hook. He would come in and that. I mean, Tom, I do think there are some exceptions. I've seen speakers come in.
Well, that is. I mean, that's the hook is that's visual.
Yeah, no. I know, but he was so over the top. It was like, I can't take it. I got to get out of the room.
That's funny. Anyway, I think this is an important component, and I think if people are aggressive vocally and visually, it's going to translate into high energy, high interest, probably high levels of confidence, because we prepared, because we buy into what we're going to be talking about. Gives us a chance that everybody else is going to buy into it too. The audience will never buy in more than you. So if you buy in at a high level, there's a chance they might buy in at a high level. Only going to really be translated because of energy, which comes vocally and visually. And when you think about different traits for a great speaker, you look at all of these traits. How many of these traits are verbal? None. They're all vocal and visual, right? So I think, again, it comes down to just this knowledge of, hey, if I'm going to be effective, if I'm going to have impact, it's going to happen because of the aggressive vocal nature. And again, Shawn's example was, that's absurd for someone to practice a 10 or 15-minute speech at the top of your lungs. But again, think about how that would get people out of their comfort zone. That when it was appropriate to yell, you could yell. And it could be legit. It could be authentic because you've done it. And, and it's not, if you yelled for 15 straight minutes, people would tune out because it wouldn't be, but I love the exercise they had to do because I think that's the key. And then again, one of the ways to truly, especially if you ever get a question, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen people like during a Q&A, you get a question from the audience and we don't check in after we answer it. Hey, did that make sense? Because I think half the time, the answer that the speaker might give might not make sense. And if we don't ask, then we're still not transferring the knowledge that we want to transfer. So checking in, not only for, hey, do you know how to do it now? Do you see how this is really important? But then the attitude too is just key. And again, I think some people naturally check in, but I think there's the majority. When someone asks a question, or even if someone makes a comment, I would still want to check back in with them, just again to kind of close that loop. It's the empathic thing to do. it also ensures if we have any belief that our message got transferred, becomes really, really important. So anyway, I would love to throw it back. Doug, Lauren, any thoughts from you? This is a little quick hour and 15-minute little deal here, but we want to impart on both of you and all of the folks who are going to be watching via archive this idea of plan it out, focus on the audience benefit, and then get aggressive as you deliver it and make sure that you're engaging them. Any thoughts, any questions?
No, I think you guys did a good job, and I don't think you engaged Doug and I enough since there was only two of us. You could have
Well, I wanted to provide a little bit of a safe environment, not go overboard, but this is also a nice little checklist. Anyway, Doug, I didn't mean to jump if you had any thoughts or any comments about today.
No, I thought it was great. Again, this is you in the beginning of the presentation, you talked about being nervous. I just recently took over the third, I guess, leg of a wholesalership and had a presentation last Friday in front of all three sales teams and all the principals and everything else. And I'll tell you, for the first time in a long time, man, was I nervous?
I bet.
So I just hope with continued practice and I really like what you're talking about, keeping things a little bit shorter, being specific as to what are the three things that you want to deliver and have them take home with them, and just go from there. I just think getting pulling back the layers will certainly help me as I present in the future.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Shawn, Jim, any thoughts, any comments from either of you as we kind of wrap up our delivering and the building the agenda and facilitating the sales meeting?
The only thing I was going to say is the Dale Carnegie yelling speech is like 2 minutes. I think if it was 15, we'd all lose our voice.
That'd be tough. That would be tough.
Although I was thinking, when would that apply? And let's say you were giving us, a speech in front of a room, and you thought you were going to have a microphone, and then you didn't. You might not have to scream at the top of your voice, but you have to project. And a lot of times, people do not project enough in a room. That's one thing. But the other is that on the Fox selling system, underneath within the scorecard section, there's a scorecard on.
That's a great point. Thank you.
And so I would just review it. I think that one, if you're trying to mentor somebody on conducting sales meetings, it's a good checklist. Or if you're giving a sales meeting and you want somebody to maybe do a scorecard on you, I think it would be especially somebody that you trusted. Then you could get some feedback on how you could improve. So that would be my only added comment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that is because it's going to really mirror a lot of what you see here. Yeah, that's great. Well, good stuff. Well, Lauren and Doug, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. We look forward to seeing you next month, or heck, since we're all local, we're all kind of local, maybe even before that. Who knows?
Tomorrow. We have another one tomorrow.
We
same
do.
Same time, same place.
Same time, same place.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Doug,
guys.
nice seeing you. Say hello to the family for me, please.
Yeah. You as well, Jim. Thank you so much.
Take
See
care.
y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.